Senator from Oklahoma.
Well, Mr. President, it's been a long day. We've heard about everything that can be heard from a lot of different people, and I've come to some conclusions that there are some things that are incontrovertible here after hearing both sides debate all day long. And there are 6 things that we should be looking at, and I'll just real quickly summarize these. I think it's kind of a good wrap-up. There are 6 things. First of all, this deal rewards and legitimizes Iran for violating international laws and for in treaties and United Nations Security Council resolutions. I said rewards and legitimizes. The second thing it does is it rewards Iran with the $100 billion. You've heard it today. That could be a floating figure. We're not sure just how much it is. But we do know this, what they do with their money, and that is expand its influence with terrorist organizations. The third thing, it places the Middle East on the brink of a new arms race. And this is something that we've heard from others for quite some time. And now we already have some countries coming forward with what their intentions are. The fourth thing, it fails to dismantle Iran's enrichment infrastructure. That's been stated by a lot of people. No one really is denying that. And fifth, it places no restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile program. You got to keep in mind, we've been talking about bombs all day, but you got to deliver the bombs to make them effective, and that's when the missile programs come into play. And then sixth, and I think it's most important, and that is there is no, in my opinion, no verification at all. And I'd like to kind of summarize that real quickly. The fact that it rewards and legitimizes Iran's violation. Keep in mind, they have violated almost every international law or treaty or United Nations Security Council, the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, for developing nuclear weapons. They have violated that. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, that has to do with freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of discrimination, and freedom from torture. They have violated that. The International Convention on Taking of Hostages, as several people have mentioned today, like the junior senator from Georgia. He asked, what about the 4 hostages that are over there? I would carry it one step further. One of them was an FBI agent named Robert Levinson. Robert Levinson now holds a record of having been held hostage longer than anyone else in history, and he's still there. He's still there at a time that we are in this process. And the resolutions on the access to nuclear facilities, they have violated that. I think everyone knows that. Iran's shown from time to time they can't be trusted. And the Director General of the IAEA has said that Iran has consistently failed to provide information or access needed to allay the IAEA's concerns about weapons potential. So that's the first. The second thing, the rewards the world's leading sponsor of terrorists. And we're talking about the United States does not normally negotiate with terrorists. This is something I've heard for many, many years, as long as I've been here, until now. And Iran remains the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. We've heard it all day today. And according to the State Department's 2009 country reports on terrorism, they have provided training and weapons to the Taliban fighting our forces in Afghanistan. The Iranian IEDs have killed U.S. troops in Iraq. They've paid the Taliban in Afghanistan to kill U.S. troops. Iran supports Hamas in Palestine, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad in Syria. And even in the midst of, I had occasion to be in the Persian Gulf on the USS Carl Vinson just a few weeks ago. It was during the negotiations, and there I was in the Persian Gulf. At the same time, the Iranian ship was taking weapons down to Yemen to kill Americans, and that was while we're negotiating. Iran, they're bankrolling the slaughter of tens of thousands of Syrians, and publicly committed the annihilation of the state of, for the annihilation of the state of Israel, and called death for America while we're in the middle of negotiations. General Austin made the statement. He was the U.S. Central Command, and I was there when he made this statement. He said, and this is a quote, he said, "Iran represents the most significant threat to the central region. Iran continues to pursue policies that threaten U.S. strategic interests and goals throughout the Middle East." And, you know, as was stated by my good friend just before me, even Susan Rice, who would do almost anything that the president asked, said that we could expect that some of this money, this $100 billion or whatever the amount ends up being, is going to be used to fortify their terrorist friends. So, you know, we can only conclude that the financial windfall estimated to be over $100 billion will be used to fortify more terrorism. And the third thing that I think was made today, these are the six that I think have become incontrovertible, and that is that it places the Middle East on the brink of a new arms race. We've heard it quite often. Dr. Kissinger was testified before our committee, the Armed Services Committee, just the other day. He said, regarding the ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran, he said, quote, "The impact of this approach will be to move from preventing proliferation to managing it." And we recall last month when Prime Minister Netanyahu warned, he said, quote, "The deal that was supposed to end nuclear proliferation will actually trigger nuclear proliferation. It will trigger a nuclear arms race in the Middle East." Saudi Arabia has always been talking recently about possibly being the first to jump in there on this new program. So we can expect it to happen. We know it's going to happen. The fourth thing is it fails to dismantle Iran's enrichment infrastructure. I think that's been driven home by many people here. It permits Iran to retain its enrichment infrastructure, including advanced centrifuges, and continue to develop its enrichment technology. And that's something that is now, I think, pretty much agreed to. And fifth, and next to the last, is places no restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile development. You got to keep in mind, people who don't and have not talked much on this floor about the fact that they talk about the bomb, but there has to be a delivery system before the bomb can be effective. I can remember in 2007, our unclassified intelligence report said that by 2015, Iran would have the bomb and a delivery system. Well, here it is, 2015, and they weren't that far off. And so we know what the capability is out there, what they're planning on doing, and the U.S. intelligence assesses, and this is the quote, and this is very significant, Iran's ballistic missiles are inherently capable of delivering weapons of mass destruction, and that Iran's program on space launch vehicles improves Tehran's ability to develop long-range missiles, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. And that one thing no one has mentioned on this thing is that we made an arrangement in the previous administration, knowing that Iran was going to have this capability. We have some 30 ground-based interceptors, but they're all on the West Coast. And because we thought that was where it was going to have to come from. But guess what? All of a sudden, Iran is coming from the other direction. Well, the first thing this president did when he took office, Obama did away with our commitment. We had an arrangement with the Czech Republic to have a ground-based interceptor there. And I can remember so well, one of the best friends that we have over there made the statement. He said, "Are you sure now that if we enrage Russia by having this system, that you're not going to pull the rug out from under us?" And I said, "Absolutely." Sir, that was Václav Klaus, one of our best friends over there. I said, "Absolutely." Of course, that's what he did. And so now we have that same problem with the delivery system. And the last one, I think, is most important. And I think I may be the only member of the Senate who believes this. But I look at this, and I go back home. And a lot of times you don't find the wisdom here in Washington. You have to go back home. And certainly over this past month, being around my state of Oklahoma, people asked the question, and he said, well, wait a minute. If they have all this time, once accused of something, or if the IAEA should say, we believe they are making a bomb in a certain location, once they do that, if they have the ability under this deal to delay that, not just 24 hours, not just 24 days, but they can go on and delay it for 2 additional periods by applying to the Joint Commission for 15 days, and then the Minister of Foreign Affairs 15 days. That's 54 days. You know, I'd suggest that we stop and think about that. If we know that somebody has something, but they have 54 days to either destroy it or hide it or put it someplace else, they're going to do it. And so my people in Oklahoma say, you know, there just isn't any kind of verification. That we all remember what Ronald Reagan said, you know, trust but verify. You kids are too young to remember what happened during the Soviet Union and all that problem, but clearly that was the major concern at that time. So this is the situation that was pointed out way back during the joint presentation of the House and the Senate by Netanyahu. I think if he just changed his registration, I'd love it if he'd run for president of the United States. He's the kind of guy we need. And when he made the statement at that time that this is this no deal is going to be better than the bad deal that is on the table, I believe that's true. I had occasion to publish an op-ed last week in the Wall Street Journal urging states to hold fast to their sanctions on Iran. You know, even if they consider strengthening and expanding those sanctions. Here's the thing that people don't understand. This is something where the states have, the reason he gets by, the president gets by with not calling this a treaty that would have to be confirmed and verified by this body, is that it's dealing with the states and not the federal government. So my hope was that many other states are going to be doing what we're doing in the state of Oklahoma in holding on to their sanctions and not releasing any of them. And I think that would certainly, if this thing becomes a reality, about one of the few things we can do. I'll end with a quote from then President Bill Clinton in 1994. I remember I was there and I heard him make this statement. He said, after the deal with North Korea, this is a quote, he said, "This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons. The United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments." And 2 decades later, the Defense Intelligence Agency announced that it had moderate confidence that North Korea has a nuclear weapon small enough to be placed on a ballistic missile. So that's what's going on. That's in just today's New York Times. I don't know how anyone could take them seriously when we have the guy who's the real boss over there, the Ayatollah Khomeini. He said that in talking about Israel, he said, quote, "I'm telling you first, you will not be around in 25 years. We'll annihilate you in that period of time." Then he talked about the United States. He said, "Iranians must not forget the United States is the great Satan." Ayatollah Khomeini warns, criticizing those calling for better relations, to want to show this Satan as an angel, but the Iranian nation has pushed this Satan out. We should not allow it to sneak back in through the window. Those are the guys we're negotiating with. With that, I would say it's not a treaty, it's not a deal, it's surrender. And I would yield the floor.